Today, it's all about reverb on drums. I typically like the good old-fashioned spring reverb. To me, that's just the best sounding drum reverb. Digital, analog, it doesn't matter. It just smacks. But there are moments in time where you might need a little bit of plates, or even some weird vintage digital lexicon style, non-linear, AMS. It just depends on the song. So the track that we are working on is something I produced a couple years back from a band called The Monroe, and the song is just sick. It's a good one. So let's get a little taste.
I'll wake it up. I'll wake it up. I'll wake it up.
And I will admit, these are not the best drum sounds I've ever gotten, so here's what they sound like. Let's also take off all the reverb. Boom. Dryness. There's a considerable amount of automation going on this track because the overheads were getting the most disgusting click out of the cross stick. It was literally making me want to vomit. The spring reverb that I chose is from Arturia, and it sounds like this. I wanted a long decay. That's one of the plus sides of digital plugins, at least digital spring reverb plugins. You can actually extend the decay. That's a pretty rare setting on hardware spring reverbs. You get one spring and that's it. You don't get multiple springs or some magic knob that can extend and shrink springs. You just get what you get. But here in the computer, oh man, we can manipulate springs like no one's business. So let's hear that in the mix.
There will be
Now, if that was dry. Honestly, that's not too bad. But when we add the reverb, we're really setting a mood. Now what we can do is try some different sounds, okay? Because I've been using the Arturia to death. There are other plugins that exist, and one of them happens to be by this company called Pulsar Primavera. I just got this about a week ago, and it has more options than any other spring reverb that I've seen. Let's swap it out. I'm pretty much copying the settings, because here in the Arturia, I have the Gibbs tank selected. And what is that? Let's find out. I'm curious. Reverb. What is it? Let's learn. Behringer. Huh. I'm seeing a lot of tanks, so I'm assuming that it's a very popular tank. So anyways, usually my ears tend to like that Gibbs the most. So I'm using Gibbs on Arturia, and then I decided to do the same thing on the Pulsar. So I'm going to solo these drums so we can hear. And mind you, it's a little thick. I went kind of heavy on the reverb. And I'm also pretty much sending everything snare and overheads. And the reason why I'm doing the overheads is because sometimes I'll do overheads only and not even snare, just to be a little psychedelic and weird. This time I'm doing everything because, like I said, this cross stick just had such a fugly sound. I just could not. Yeah, so it's that one, not. That soft one has a good tone. Here's the drums with no reverb, and then we're going to add the Primavera on the overheads. Now here's the Arturia. The thing with the Primavera is I'm able to get a much wider sound. It's got this great width control. I co-sign both these plugins. I think both of them are excellent. You want to have some options. Sometimes you get tired of hearing the same old thing over and over again, so it's fun to have these different flavors, if you will. So let's take another listen. Let's hear everything. Here is Completely Dry.
There will be another day for us. There will be another.
Now let's add the Arturia.
There will be another day for us. There will be another.
And then the Primavera.
There will be another day for us. There will be another.
It's not rocket science. They actually both work just fine. As far as I'm concerned, they both do the job. I like them both. What can I say? But I will show you now why plate reverb does not work on this track.
There will be another day for us. There will be another.
I believe it just sounds too clean. The springs add a bit of nastiness that what can I say? It matches my freak. Here we are back in some familiar territory. We're looking at the Nico session, which is from the video that went crazy. And since then, I have done my share of analog processing to the session, which is running it through the TX mixer, the spring reverb, the Echoplex, and the DBX compressors. This is what it sounds like now. The reverb here I've chosen is my Intersound PRV-1. You know, I bought this reverb in a Taco Bell parking lot. I digress. This reverb is my favorite. It's also the only one that I own. With the PRV, you can also add line signal. I decided to not go 100% wet. I added some snare in there to just kind of double up and just give it some thickness. Here is the drums with no reverb. And then with the PRV-1. Another thing that I did here, which is a bit unconventional, is I added the Waves ADT fake stereo preset to make it sound wider. So here it is mono. And then with the plugin on. We're filling the spectrum, we're getting wider, we're getting more extravagant. And it sounds more fancy. I put the Echoplex through the Jekyll and Hyde pedal. I like it. The reverb is not screaming at you. Here's what happens if we turn it up. But I felt that quieter was better. And this time I sent only the snare through it. Let's put those plugins on the snare and mute our Intersound and then see what the plugins sound like compared to our Taco Bell reverb. So I'm going to mute this. And then I'm going to send this bad boy out to... And I'm going to add, just put them all there, okay? Let's get our spring. Let's get our Primavera. Let's do some weird stuff and put something else. I don't use this very much, but it does exist. The AMS. We'll get to that. So, for starters, the Arturia is the first good spring reverb plugin I've ever heard. Since then, other people have kind of jumped on the bandwagon, but when it first came out, I was shocked. Here's the hardware. I kind of feel like there's no comparison. The hardware sounds better. But let's stack up this hardware to the Primavera. Let's widen it because we can. The Primavera has more features than the Arturia that's kind of fun to mess with, such as tension. I think to closely imitate my hardware, we're going to go with the tension on 10. And then we have the excitation. That's essentially imitating, like giving the reverb a little slap, which is something you can do with the real units. One time, for a special effect that I use all the time on my videos, I dropped a spring reverb like 4 times and stacked them up on top of each other. And it's like an effect I use. I think that effect is in the free pack that you can download. Is it? I don't want to say something and not be true. Aha! It's in there. So yeah, I dropped my reverb to get the most perfect drop sound. That wasn't a very smart thing to do. But you know what? It didn't break. So you can slap springs around and get that sound, and that's what this excitation knob is doing. So yeah, I'm going to turn that down a little bit. We're going to try to match it with our good friend, the Intersound. Okay, let's bring it back. Even though they're from the same spring family, they really are apples and oranges. Now we're going to try some Prince, some AMS, non-linear. That's my vibe. If I'm going digital, I'm going non-linear. See how weird that is compared to the spring? For the hell of it, let's throw a plate on here. Let's go Sound Toys. Now I think this would be a fantastic reverb for vocals, but to me it's just too clean, too crisp, too pretty for these drums specifically. Even as we cycle through these different modes, this one's called a Classic 140. Let's go gold foil. It's a little dirtier. I can appreciate that. Let's go audio con. That makes me sick. It's a little darker. Again, it's just too bright. But yeah, that's just not my vibe. I actually enjoy this non-linear more than that, just for the weirdness sake. Oh yeah, and we also have a reverse, which might be cool. Again, for the sake of weirdness, I enjoy that. Other good things about this Primavera is this ducking feature, which is basically a built-in compressor that compresses the reverb signal. When the snare hits, it ducks the reverb and gives you more snare. And then as it fades away, it brings that reverb back up. Let's hear it. Definitely a unique feature when it comes to this one. What else do we have here? Got some funky stuff in my sketches folder. A lot of the things that I've been doing lately require no reverb on the drums. So here we have an extremely dead snare. At the time I felt like reverb would not work on this, but let's see what happens if we try. Let's try the Primavera first. And what I think I'm going to want is, we want to make it very wide. Let's try the ducking. We want 100% reverb. And we want... Pre-delay is kind of cool where the reverb can hit late. And I think that just might work on this track. Let's try it. It's a little much. How can we tame this? I think the situation with this song is everything in the record is so dry that adding a reverb to the drums sounds so bizarre. It's like, well, where's the reverb coming from if it's only on the snare? So I think that if we put maybe a more pretty reverb on the piano, maybe we could fool the listener and say, oh, this makes sense. And since I was just talking smack about it, let's try the super plate, because the super plate is a fantastic reverb. It just needs to find its place. Let's take some bass out, let's take some highs out, and let's give it not as much of a decay. Let's see what happens. I'm going to give us more pre-delay and see what that does for us. I think pre-delay is really, really nice when it comes to a record with a lot of space. Let's pull that pre-delay back and I'll show you how messy it can get. And we'll bring it way back. It gives it a different rhythm, it gives it a different feel. So definitely experiment with the pre-delay. That can do a lot for the feel of your song, the feel of your beat, and it'll also clean up some mess. But also that ducking feature in the spring reverb, this sounds great. Actually liking the way this sounds with reverb now. Here's dry. And now here's with the reverb on the piano and the snare to try to mix it into like the same world. So let's try a different reverb just to see. Other ones that I'm fans of. Let's try the Arturia plate on this. And the plate is a long one. This plugin is cool because we got some drive, so let's drive it. If your tastes are similar to mine, you can tell right away that it does not sound as good as the Primavera. And then the other one. But there's a time and place for everything. For instance, there's another track that I was working on the other day. I felt that it required some digital reverb on the snare. Let's hear these drums. So over here, we are using a very strange digital reverb. So what we want to do is add it's because it's my favorite lately. Let's add the Primavera and let's see if we can beat it. Here it is in the track. Because I wasn't going for a very vintage sound, I feel like that reverb works. But like I said, let's take it off and let's try to shape a new sound. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to put it on tube and I'm going to drive it this time. And I'm also going to make it really loose and excited and wide and ducked. Let's try these different modes. Whoa. I'm feeling the Gibbs all the way. Okay, let's hear it in the mix. My apologies for the distortion. It happens from time to time. So here's a moment that I find quite rare, but it happens. I think that the digital reverb suits the nature of this track much better compared to the spring. They're just two different worlds, apples and oranges. And this one calls for an orange. Let's put it back on. I just like it better. That's the vibe there. That is the vibe. What else can we find? I got some weird stuff. No. Okay, let's hear the drums in this. Here we have a clap that I put a plate reverb on, followed by a pretty intense EQ. And here's where I think that clean plate sounds good, where other times it kind of falls short and it kind of makes the song sound too clean and too corny. Let's take out this clap. There's a halftime 808. Let's take that out so we can really focus on what the clap is doing. Let's bring that clap back in, and I'm going to turn the reverb up so you can really hear it. Let's mute it. So it has some spring on it. That's from me. I put a lot of spring reverb on my samples, and so this one is like a 2-for-1. It's going to have both reverbs. I think that it sounds good by itself with just spring. But I think the inclusion of this plate makes you get a little bit more lost in the beat. So those are just a couple examples that I feel like show you when plate reverb can be chosen versus spring reverb versus nonlinear versus a vintage digital reverb. Those are the main ones that I use. That's where I typically gravitate towards. Those just sound best to me. So to recap, that pre-delay can really move mountains. Ducking feature is also fantastic. Now you can also recreate that yourself by adding a compressor, but having it in a really handy little knob goes a long way. So my favorite spring reverb at the moment is the Primavera from Pulsar. That just has a lot of features and a unique sound. I love the fact that you can widen it and you can adjust the tension of the springs. It's very, very detailed. And then as far as plates go, everyone makes a plate. UAD does a great job, and Sound Toys. EQ when you need to, give them a little extra love at the end. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you learned something, and I hope to see you next time.